Mr. Jack Riley.
Thank you. I'm going to take you back to the spring of 1970 when I was on top of the world. I was about to graduate from an all-boys Catholic high school in Pittsburgh. I had a great girlfriend, and that fall I was going to be enrolling at Salem College in West Virginia on a football scholarship. Now, Salem's a tiny school, but that didn't matter. That was my dream, to go to school on a football scholarship, follow my brother's footsteps, who was playing big-time ball at the University of Miami. I remembered how proud my father was when my brother shipped off and went down to Miami to play football, and I wanted a little piece of that too. I wanted to make him proud of me. So that April, all the football recruits were invited down to the campus at Salem to work out with the team and meet the new coach who had just been there for about a month. We had a great time. It was a very cool weekend. We got to work out. We had dinner in the special dining room with the coaches. We went out partying with students that night. And the next morning, before we left, we had a one-on-one with the new coach. And he said he wanted to hear our story. Now, when I woke up that morning, I was really excited. I wanted to tell my story to this coach. And I walked into his office, and I took one look at him, and I knew that he wanted to tell his story, and that it wasn't going to be good for me. He sat me down. He's on the corner of the desk, and he looked down, and he said, "Son," he said, "we're going to up the level of competition in this program, and we're going to get bigger guys. We want bigger people, and to be honest with you, a 150-pound outside linebacker just isn't going to make it." Well, I was stunned. I really didn't hear much of what he was saying. Was he taking my scholarship away? I felt like in 5 minutes, my dream was just crushed. He said something about coming to summer school, working out, putting some weight on, maybe walking on that fall. He might be able to get some money for books for me, something like that. But I knew what had happened. I knew my dream was gone. And on the way driving home that night from West Virginia to Pittsburgh, I realized that my dream really was gone. The reality of what had happened set in. And if I was going to have to pay to go to school that fall, I was going to have to work during the summer. So I wasn't going to be able to go down and enroll in summer school and work out and maybe walk on. And then a second reality hit, and it kind of gripped the steering wheel a little tighter. And I realized when I get home, I've got to tell my dad this. And I wasn't looking forward to that. I didn't want to disappoint my dad. I felt like he was going to be angry. I knew he was going to blame me. Now, let me tell you a little bit about my dad. Chuck Riley is a big old Irishman. He was raised from a single mom as an only child. When he got out of World War II, he went into the mills in Pittsburgh, and he worked his whole life there. He was the kind of guy that wasn't really what you would call touchy-feely. Didn't necessarily tell you that he loved you. But that guy from a single mom as an only child got together with my mother, and they created a family of 8 kids, 6 boys. 6 boys who had a lot of energy and a nose for trouble. Between neighborhood fights and sports and just plain falling out of trees, spent a lot of time getting hurt. My dad, when we were young, was on a first-name basis with all the ER nurses at Mercy Hospital on the south side of Pittsburgh. When he walked up to the admitting desk, the only question they asked was, "Which one is it this time, Chuck?" And again, as I said, he wasn't the kind of guy that could say, at least I didn't hear him much, say, I love you. I don't know that I ever heard that as a young guy. When we were kids and we would go out on Saturday night, my mother would say, bless yourself, I love you. My dad would call out from behind his newspaper, and no hospital runs tonight. So that evening, when I came home from West Virginia to face my father and tell him my story, I wasn't looking forward to it. Walked into the living room. He was behind his newspaper, sitting in his chair. That newspaper was kind of like his force field. That's what he used to protect himself from all the chaos of 8 kids running around the house and all kind of noise and havoc. So I talked into the back of the newspaper and I told him my story. I said, Dad, I didn't get the scholarship. They want bigger guys. I'm going to have to pay to go to school next year. I'm going to need a job at the mill. Can you get me a job at the mill, Dad? I wanted to hear him say, you know what, everything's going to be all right. I'll get you a job. You'll be able to pay for college. That's the most important thing here. But instead, all I heard was silence. And that silence was deafening to me. And so I yelled out. I said, you know what? I don't want to go to college anyhow. This is nuts. The only reason I wanted to go was to play football. So I need a job this summer, Dad. I got to get a good car. I got to get on with my life. Can you get me a job at the mill? Now that got a reaction. Newspaper comes down about half-mast. He looks over, veins kind of bulging on the side of his neck, and he says, bullshit. I didn't send you to 12 years of Catholic schools to have you pass up going to college. You're going to college. And I said, Dad, I can't get into a college now. It's the end of April. The admissions are closed. I need a job. I got to do something with my life. Can you get me a job at the mill? And he just put the paper up, and he said, we'll see. Well, about a week and a half later, he walks in, gives me a piece of paper, and on the piece of paper, it says, Pittsburgh Metal Processing, Sharpsburg, Pennsylvania, phone number named Frank. And he says, that's your summer job. I said, Dad, this isn't the mill. What happened to getting me a job at the mill? It's a better job. It's right down the road. He said, this is your summer job. But I said, Dad, I'm not going to make enough money to be able to go to school this summer working at a heat treating plant. He said, this will work. This is your summer job. He just shut me right down. I'm thinking, man, he doesn't even care enough to want me to work at a place where he works. I wasn't happy about that. But in about a week, I went out and I met with the guy at Pittsburgh Metal Processing. The foreman's name is Frank. Frank brings me in, introduces me to a few people at the plant, tells me what they do at the plant. Basically, they cook steel to strengthen it. You know, ovens, quenching, you know, that type of thing. It's a cooking process. When the tour's over, Frank comes and tells me, he kind of lays what I would call the bomb on me. He says, kid, you're going to be working with me on the 3 p.m. to 12 midnight shift. And I said, 3 to 12? That's a graveyard shift. They call that the graveyard shift because you might as well be dead. Because all you do on the graveyard shift is eat, sleep, and work. You've got nothing else. No girls, no sports, no friends for the entire summer. That's what you're going to do. And then as I'm leaving, he says, all right, you'll be working 59 days this summer. I said, 59 days? Why 59 days? And he said, well, because when you work 60 days, you got to join the union. And then you have to start paying dues. And I said, well, maybe I want to stay on. Maybe this is the job I want to do. And as he's walking away, he just waved me off and says, you're going to college. So I walked out of there knowing that what was in store for me was my summer in hell. That June, while my friends were doing graduation parties and playing sports, I started work at Pittsburgh Metal Processing from 3 to 12. And the first day at Pittsburgh Metal Processing pretty much set the tone for the whole summer. Frank, the foreman, introduces me to the rest of the guys on the night shift as a college boy. And he tells me, he says, your job is to shut up, listen to only me, and watch your fingers. And Frank knew what he was talking about because he was missing a few digits. So. And then I look around at the two coworkers that I had that worked with me on the night shift, and I am convinced they were the inspiration for the movie Dumb and Dumber. Jim was a big, tall guy, skinny as can be, and he was absolutely on speed. He never stopped. He's running around the shop constantly. Frank is screaming at him to slow down, and the whole time he's working, he's doing play-by-play on everything he's doing. He's like, Jim's pulling the oven out, open the oven, we're pulling the crane up. You know, and Jim, within 2 weeks of me being there, Jim cut a tendon in his hand, sure enough, which meant that I had to do his job for the rest of the summer. So I'm not happy about that. The second guy was named Willie. Now, Willie absolutely was the picture of Pigpen from the Peanuts comic strip. I am not lying when I tell you that when Willie sat down, a cloud of dust came up. And Willie was this know-it-all. I mean, everything about sports, everything about politics, everything about women. And the worst part about Willie was he was from West Virginia. So every time I heard that twang, I thought of the great humiliation of Salem College. These guys ostracized me pretty much all summer, which actually wasn't bad because when they did talk to me, all they did was call me college boy and tell me how much I didn't know, and you don't know shit. Let me tell you something, college boy. There were only 3 chairs in the lunchroom. I'd go in to join them for lunch, and of course had no place to sit, so I found a place out on the loading dock for the summer to work. And the job was hot. I mean, it was just constant heat. I was wearing what I would call a spacesuit. It looked like it was the heat suit, but it looked like a spacesuit. It had a helmet, a mask that came down. The mask was always fogging up. And what we was doing was pulling these big steel ingots out of a 2,000-degree oven, hooking them on a crane and taking them over and putting them in quench tanks all night long. That's what you were doing. And Frank, my foreman, who was this small guy with Popeye forearms, was always hovering down my neck, just yelling everything. You know, watch your time, watch your crane. No, don't throw the net oven. I mean, he was always yelling at me. And I never talked back to him. I accepted that. I think that was just part of his voice. He was just always yelling. And then, so this kind of was what I would call my summer of hell. But there was one bit of redemption at the heat treating plant. And that, of course, was payday. And every payday, I would get the check and take it up to the bank to put it in my savings account. And I would add up how much closer I was to being able to do what it was that I wanted to do, whether it was going to be to go to college or to get a car and start a new life. And at home, I have to say that because of the shift I worked, I didn't see my dad very much that summer. But when I did see him, all we did was argue. He wanted to know what I was doing about getting in school, wanted to know if I was looking for schools. And, you know, I felt like he was withholding so much approval from me that year that I wasn't going to tell him what I was doing. Of course I was looking at some schools and looking at some opportunities, but there weren't many, and I wasn't going to give him that satisfaction of telling that. So it was a constant back and forth. We were arguing all summer. You know, as the summer wore on, I actually thought that I was starting to earn Frank's respect. He wasn't yelling as much at me. He wasn't hovering around, shadowing me as much. And he was actually coming over and telling me to go take a break, and he would pull a few out and do a few things. So, but with about a week to go, kind of a summer countdown was on, I had what I'll call the big blow up. I was pulling a piece of metal out of an oven, and one of the hooks on the side of it just came loose. and it was dancing above the floor, about a foot off the floor, just spinning around. And I've got my face mask was all fogged up, and I'm holding the controls to the crane, and I'm trying to hook up the piece of steel, and I can't get it. And I see something coming toward me, and it's Frank running at me as fast as he can run. And he pushes me out of the way, knocks me down, grabs the crane, brings the piece of steel up higher. It stops wiggling around. He moves it over, dumps it in the quenching tank. And the whole time he's doing it, he's swearing up a storm. And he's swearing at me. And then he turns around and he goes, "What's the matter with you, you stupid son of a bitch?" And I'm dropping the gloves, and I'm taking off the heat coat. I'm pulling off the helmet. And now I'm going at him. Now I am going back at him. I'm bumping my chest in his, and I'm saying, "You're the stupid son of a bitch. Let me tell you something. You treated me like a dog all summer. I worked more than all these guys here combined. And all you've done is treat me like hell. I am leaving. I am done. But before I go, you and I are going at it." And I've got him, one hand on his shoulder, and I've got a fist up. I'm ready to hit him. And I look down, and he's got this smile on his face. And I'm, "What?" And his smile gets bigger. And "What?" And he goes, "I did my job." I said, You did your job? "Yeah, I did my job." "What job?" He goes, "Don't you get it?" "Yeah, what?" He said, "Your father put me up to this. He wanted me to make life miserable for you this summer. He wanted you to have a summer in hell because he didn't want you thinking that this job was better than going to college next fall." I was stunned. I back off. I say, "He did?" He goes, "Yeah." He goes, "Your father has a strange way of telling you that he loves you, but I guess it worked." And I said, "Yeah." And Dumb and Dumber are there. It's like a schoolyard fight. I can see that they're all hunched over and everything. And all I could think to do was reach out and shake Frank's hand. And he shook back with a vice grip that just about put me on my knees and said, "And if you ever take a swing at me again, I'll put you in that quenching tank." So I went home that night, kind of clanking around the kitchen, trying to wake my dad up. And I see him walking down the hall, kind of squinting. And he says, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm going to college." He kind of straightens up, says, "Good." And he walks away and grabs his newspaper and goes into the bathroom. That fall, I enrolled this kid from all-boys high school enrolls. I'm in the first male class of an all-girls college, Mercyhurst College in Erie, Pennsylvania. The argument with my dad on that one's another story. And actually today I'm on the board at Mercyhurst. And so P.S. When I was raising my kids, and on Saturday nights when they were going out, I always said, "Hey, I love you." And no hospital runs. Thank you.
Jack Riley, ladies and gentlemen.